I was about to board the train when a stranger grabbed my arm. She looked terrified, not for herself, for me. "Pretend you're sick," she whispered. "Get off this train right now. I heard them talking, your son and his wife. They're planning an accident." I looked through the window. Kelvin sat with Vivian, both staring at me, not with concern, with anticipation. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. My name is Eleanor Hartwell. Most people call me Ellie. I'm 62 years old, and 6 months ago I discovered that my own son was planning to harm me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the small moments I should have noticed, the warning signs I chose to ignore, and the stranger on a train platform who saved my life with 7 whispered words. The morning light filtered through my study window, casting warm shadows across the photographs that lined my desk. Kelvin, at 5 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera like he'd just conquered the world. Kelvin at 18, graduation cap slightly crooked, his father's arm around his shoulders. Kelvin at his wedding, looking at Vivian like she hung the moon. I traced my finger across that last photo, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. David had been gone 4 years now. Heart attack, sudden and merciless. One morning he was making coffee and complaining about the neighbor's dog, and by noon he was gone. The house felt too big after that, too quiet. So when Kelvin called 18 months ago, his voice tight with embarrassment, asking if he and Vivian could stay with me, just for a little while after his startup failed, I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I told him. "This is your home. It always will be." I meant it. What mother wouldn't? They moved in with 2 suitcases and promises. Kelvin would get back on his feet. Vivian would find work in her field. They just needed time to regroup, to recover from the financial setback. I understood. Life doesn't always go according to plan. What I didn't understand, what I refused to see, were the small oddities that started accumulating like dust in corners, the whispered conversations that stopped the moment I walked into a room, the way Vivian's eyes would dart away when I asked simple questions about their day, how Kelvin had started avoiding my gaze during dinner, focusing on his plate like the answers to the universe were hidden in his mashed potatoes. I noticed. Of course I noticed. 35 years of catching embezzlers and fraudsters had trained my brain to flag inconsistencies automatically, but I explained it all away. They're stressed about money. They're embarrassed about needing help. Vivian's probably self-conscious about living with her mother-in-law. I'm reading too much into things. I'm being paranoid. That's what I told myself every single time my instincts whispered that something was wrong. Because here's the truth I couldn't face. I desperately wanted my son back. Those 18 months of having Kelvin under my roof again, hearing his footsteps in the hallway, sharing meals together. It filled a void that David's death had carved into my soul. I needed to believe everything was fine, because the alternative was unthinkable. So I made myself blind, and they knew it. The first time I caught them, really caught them, was a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks before my birthday. I'd been in my study reviewing household accounts. Old habits die hard when I noticed a charge I didn't recognize. Some streaming service I'd never heard of, $47.99 a month, pulling from my checking account for the past 6 months. I walked to the living room to ask Kelvin about it. The door was slightly open, and I could hear them talking in low, urgent tones. "Need to be more careful," Vivian was saying. She almost saw the statement last week. "She's not going to notice," Kelvin replied. His voice sounded different, harder than I'd ever heard it. "She trusts us completely." That's the whole point. I froze in the hallway, my heart suddenly pounding against my ribs. "They're probably talking about a surprise for my birthday," I told myself. "That's why they're being secretive. You're jumping to conclusions." I backed away quietly, returned to my study, and never mentioned the streaming charge. Looking back now, I want to grab that version of myself by the shoulders and shake her. I want to scream in her face, "Open your eyes! Your son just told his wife that he's exploiting your trust." But grief and loneliness had made me stupid. Love had made me dangerous to myself. The second time was worse. I woke early one morning, around 5, unable to sleep. As I padded down the hallway toward the kitchen, I heard Vivian's voice drifting from the guest bedroom. The door was cracked open, golden light spilling across the hardwood floor. "Just 2 more weeks," she was saying. Low, controlled. A pause. She was on the phone. Then everything changes forever. I held my breath. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks we're planning a birthday trip. It'll look completely natural. My coffee mug trembled in my hand. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering so loud I was certain she could hear it. Completely natural. She doesn't suspect. The bedroom door swung open. Vivian emerged, phone pressed to her chest, and nearly collided with me. "Eleanor." Her eyes went wide. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I forced my voice steady, smiled. "Everything all right?" She recovered so fast it was almost impressive. Tucked her phone away, touched my arm with that familiar gesture of false warmth. "I was just talking to my sister about a surprise we're planning for your birthday. Don't worry about it." Another smile. "Go back to bed. You need your rest." I nodded, shuffled back toward my room like a confused old woman, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the darkness with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I hadn't just heard what I heard. A surprise. That's all. Rebecca's her sister. They're planning something nice. "You're being ridiculous, Eleanor. This is your son." I was still telling myself that lie 2 weeks later, when we arrived at the train station for my birthday trip. 30th Street Station in Philadelphia is beautiful in the morning. Massive arched windows catch the early light, casting cathedral-like shadows across the marble floors. Commuters rush past with purpose. Families drag luggage toward platforms. The air hums with announcements and the distant rumble of arriving trains. I walked slowly through the grand concourse, my small travel bag in hand, watching Kelvin and Vivian 20 feet ahead of me. They moved with unusual urgency, glancing back every few seconds to make sure I was following. "We should hurry, Mom." Kelvin checked his phone, the 4th time since we'd entered the station. "Train boards in 15 minutes. "Yeah," Vivian added, her voice tight. "Don't want to miss it." I caught up to them at the escalator leading down to the tracks. "We have plenty of time. What's the rush?" Kelvin smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Just excited. It's your birthday trip. We want everything to be perfect." That word, perfect, settled in my stomach like a stone. We descended to the platform level. The Acela Express waited beside track 7, sleek and silver, humming with electric readiness. Through the windows, I could see passengers settling into their seats, opening newspapers, checking phones. Kelvin and Vivian climbed the steps first, tickets in hand. I watched them choose facing seats near the observation deck, place their bags in the overhead compartment. They moved with practiced coordination, like actors hitting their marks. I approached the train steps, ticket ready. That's when she appeared. A conductor stepped directly into my path. A woman in her 50s, graying hair pulled back beneath her cap, wearing the standard uniform. But her expression wasn't standard at all. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide and frightened. She leaned close, so close I could smell coffee on her breath, and grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Pretend you're feeling ill," she whispered urgently. "Get off this train right now." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" I heard them talking. Her voice was barely audible, meant only for me. "Your son and his wife in the waiting area. They thought they were alone." My blood turned to ice. They were talking about an accident on the observation deck, something about making it look natural, about inheritance. Her grip tightened. "Your life is in danger. Please, trust me." Time stopped. The station noise faded to nothing. The passengers rushing past became ghosts, shadows, irrelevant. My entire world narrowed to this stranger's terrified face and the words she'd just spoken. I turned slowly, looked through the train door. Kelvin and Vivian sat together, both staring directly at me through the window, not with concern, not with impatience, with anticipation. And in that frozen moment, everything crystallized. The whispered conversations. She trusts us, completely. The overheard phone call. It'll look completely natural. The nervous energy that wasn't excitement but calculation. The way they'd insisted on this trip, this specific train, seats near the observation deck. They were going to push me. My own son was going to push me off a moving train and call it a tragic accident. The analytical part of my brain, the forensic accountant who'd spent 35 years building cases from fragments, assembled the picture in seconds. Life insurance I probably didn't know about. Debts I hadn't uncovered. A plan months in the making waiting for the perfect opportunity. My birthday trip. Their gift to me. The conductor, her name tag read Diane, was watching me. Waiting. Around us, final boarding announcements echoed through the station. Passengers brushed past. The clock was ticking. I had maybe 30 seconds to decide. I clutched my chest, let my knees buckle slightly, grabbed the handrail for support. "Help!" Diane's voice rang out across the platform, convincing because her concern was genuine. Medical assistance needed over here. Heads turned. Station staff appeared. Someone steadied me from behind while Diane supported my other arm. Through the train door, I saw Kelvin jump from his seat. Vivian was right behind him. "Mom!" He rushed to the doorway. "What's wrong?" I waved him back, keeping my voice deliberately weak, shaky. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just dizzy. Probably didn't eat enough breakfast." I managed a wan smile. "Go ahead. Enjoy the trip. I'll catch the next train and meet you there." "We should stay with you." No. I put steel beneath the frailty. "I insist. Don't let me ruin your plans. The hotel is already booked. Go, I'll be fine." Kelvin hesitated. Behind him, Vivian's hand found his shoulder. She squeezed once, hard, and leaned close to whisper something I couldn't hear. Whatever she said worked. Kelvin stepped back into the train car. His face was unreadable, but I saw it, just for a moment, the flash of frustration beneath the mask of concern. "If you're sure, Mom." "I'm sure, honey, go." The doors slid shut. I stood on the platform, supported by Diane and a security officer, watching through the window as Vivian guided Kelvin back to their seats. She was talking rapidly, gesturing. He shook his head, said something brief. The train began to move. Slowly at first, then gathering speed. The silver cars slid past one after another, windows full of passengers reading, scrolling, settling in for their journey. The last car passed. The train curved away toward the tunnel, its sound fading, becoming nothing, gone. The crowd dispersed around me. The security officer asked if I needed an ambulance. I assured him I was fine, just a moment of dizziness, probably low blood sugar. He nodded, satisfied with this explanation, and returned to his post. Then I was alone on the platform with Diane. The silence felt enormous. "Are you really all right?" Her voice was soft now, sad. She knew what she'd just done, the world she'd just shattered. I couldn't find words. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I need a minute," I finally managed. "Thank you. You may have just saved my life." She nodded slowly. "I've worked this line 23 years, ma'am. I know the difference between people planning a trip and people planning something else. What I heard," she trailed off, shook her head. "I'm sorry. I almost didn't say anything. Didn't want to believe what I was hearing. But I couldn't let you board that train. Couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet." "How did you hear them?" "Waiting area upstairs. They were in the corner, thought they were alone. I was checking schedules at the desk nearby." She paused. "They were specific. Too specific. Times, locations, how it would look like an accident, how much they'd get from the insurance." Insurance. Of course there was insurance. "Thank you," I said again. The words felt hollow, inadequate for what she'd given me. Diane squeezed my arm gently, then left me there, returning to her duties as another train arrived on a distant platform. I stood alone on the empty concrete, my travel bag still in my hand, the distant rumble of departing trains fading into the ambient noise of the station above, announcements, footsteps, the city's constant hum, life continuing as if nothing had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Kelvin. "Mom, are you okay? Call us when you feel better." I stared at the screen. My hand was steady, steadier than it had any right to be after learning that my own son had planned my murder. My own son. The boy I'd carried for 9 months. The child I'd rocked through fevers and nightmares. The teenager I'd defended to teachers and coaches. The man I'd welcomed back into my home with open arms and a grateful heart. He wanted me dead. Not hypothetically, not eventually. Today, on this train, an accident on the observation deck, a grieving son, a massive insurance payout, and all their problems solved. I pocketed the phone without responding. The shock was beginning to fade, and beneath it, something else was crystallizing. Something cold, something sharp, something I recognized from decades of professional work. Focus. When you discover fraud, you don't confront the perpetrator. That's amateur hour. Confrontation gives them time to destroy evidence, coordinate stories, lawyer up. No. When you discover fraud, you document, you trace, you build an airtight case. You let them believe they're safe while you systematically dismantle every lie they've constructed. Then you strike. I walked toward the escalator, my legs solid beneath me. My mind was already working, sorting through options, planning steps. First, get home without them knowing I know. Act confused, concerned about ruining the trip. Maintain the facade. Second, find proof, the insurance policy, bank records, whatever financial scheme they'd been running. Third, decide what comes next. I'd spent 35 years following the money, exposing lies, building cases against people who thought they were too clever to be caught. My son thought I was a vulnerable old woman he could manipulate and murder. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. The taxi wound through Philadelphia streets. As the morning sun climbed higher, I sat in the back seat, watching brownstones and corner markets slide past the window, my phone buzzing every few minutes in my pocket. Kelvin's texts, Vivian's calls. I didn't look at them. 20 minutes from 30th Street Station to Chestnut Hill. 20 minutes to transform from a woman who'd just learned her son wanted her dead into something else entirely. A hunter. The driver pulled up to my house. Empty driveway. Quiet street. The same house I'd lived in for 30 years. Raised my son in, grieved my husband in. Now it looked different somehow. Not like a home. Like evidence. I paid the driver. Climbed out. Stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. The azaleas David planted were blooming. The mailbox needed repainting. Small, ordinary details of a life that had been shattered an hour ago. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The silence was absolute. They were somewhere south of Baltimore by now, speeding toward New York, believing their plan had failed through bad luck, but could be attempted again. Different method, same ending. They had no idea I knew, and I intended to keep it that way. Here's something they don't teach you in school. When you discover someone is trying to destroy you, the worst thing you can do is react immediately. I know this because I spent 35 years watching corporate criminals hang themselves with their own arrogance. The ones who got caught, they got sloppy because no one challenged them. They left trails because they felt invincible. They documented their own crimes because they never imagined anyone was watching. My son thought I was a grieving widow, lonely and grateful for his company. My daughter-in-law saw me as an obstacle between her and financial security. Neither of them had ever seen me work. I set my bag down in the entryway, took a careful breath, and walked to my study, closed the door, sat at my desk, pulled out the leather-bound notebook I'd used for research projects throughout my career, opened to a blank page, and I began. 6 months ago, Kelvin started mentioning money troubles frequently, casual comments about debt, about struggling, about needing just a little more time. 4 months ago, Vivian began asking pointed questions about my will, my assets, my plans for the estate. framed as concern for my well-being. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of, Eleanor." 3 months ago, they suggested moving in temporarily. "Save on rent," they said. "Help me around the house." 2 months ago, Kelvin brought home bank documents that needed my signature. "Routine updates," he explained. "Account consolidation." I signed without reading carefully. I stopped writing. Bank documents. My file cabinet key was in my desk drawer. I retrieved it, crossed to the cabinet against the wall, unlocked it, found the folder labeled Insurance. There it was, a life insurance policy dated 5 weeks ago. Coverage amount, $750,000. Beneficiaries, Kelvin Hartwell and Vivian Hartwell. And at the bottom, my signature. Except I'd never seen this document before, never agreed to this policy, never authorized anyone to purchase insurance on my life. But the signature looked genuine, because it was traced from documents I had signed, those routine bank updates Kelvin brought home. My hands were steady as I photographed every page. Clinical documentation. That's what this was now. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. What I found made my stomach drop. Transactions I didn't recognize, transfers I'd never authorized, small amounts at first, $200 here, $400 there, labeled as utilities and subscription services. But over the past 18 months, they'd grown bolder, $2,000 in March, $3,000 in June, $4,500 in September. I pulled up every statement, traced every transfer, documented every theft. The total made me physically sick, $87,000. They'd stolen $87,000 from me while living under my roof, eating my food, calling me mom. But that wasn't the worst of it. I found credit cards, 3 of them, opened in my name over the past year using my address and social security number. Each one maxed out. Combined balance, $62,000. My son hadn't just planned to end me. He'd been robbing me blind for 18 months, building debt in my name, bleeding me dry while smiling across the dinner table, and I'd trusted him so completely that I never once checked. I needed more, evidence strong enough that no lawyer could explain away, no sympathetic jury could dismiss. So I made a phone call. "I need to thank a conductor who helped me during a medical emergency this morning," I told Amtrak's customer service line. "Is there a way to reach her? Her name is Diane." They connected me to her supervisor, who patched me through. "Mrs. Hartwell." Diane's voice carried immediate concern. "Are you safe? Are you somewhere secure?" "For now." "I need your help, Diane. Would you be willing to write down exactly what you overheard that day? Everything you remember, every detail. For my records?" A pause, then firm and resolved. "I'll do better than that. I'll get it notarized. What they said made me sick to my stomach. I'll have it in the mail by tomorrow." My throat tightened. This stranger owed me nothing, yet she was willing to put herself on record, to testify to what she'd witnessed, simply because it was right. "Thank you. You saved my life once already. You may be saving it again. You saved your own life by listening." Her voice softened. "Be careful, Mrs. Hartwell. People who plan what they planned, they don't give up easily." I knew she was right. Next, I needed professional verification, proof of motive that would hold up under scrutiny. I found a private investigator through the Pennsylvania licensing database, 20 years experience, specialized in financial background checks. We met at a coffee shop downtown, corner table, away from windows. He was in his 50s, gray suit, quiet competence. "What do you need, Mrs. Hartwell?" "Financial background check, 2 people." I slid an envelope across the table, $800 cash. Credit reports, business loans, debt obligations, everything legal to access. He counted the bills, nodded. 1 week. 7 days later, a manila envelope arrived by courier. I brought it to my study, locked the door, and spread the contents across my desk like artifacts in an archive. The report was thorough. Kelvin, $98,000 in failed business loans, 3 different lenders, 2 collection agencies actively pursuing payment. Vivian, $74,000 in credit card debt across 7 cards, plus a personal loan of $15,000 from a predatory lender charging 23% interest. Combined debt, over $240,000. And that didn't include the $62,000 they'd racked up in my name. I sat back in my chair staring at the numbers. This was why. This was the motive, spelled out in black and white. They were drowning, and my life was worth $750,000 to them. My death would erase their debts and leave them wealthy. My murder was an investment strategy. That evening I heard the front door open. Voices in the entryway. They were back. I rose from my desk, arranged my face into pleasant surprise, and walked out of my study. Hazel dropped her bag when she saw me, rushed forward. "Mom!" She wrapped her arms around me in an embrace that felt like a python testing its prey. We were so worried. We came back as soon as we could. I hugged her back, patted her shoulder. For one terrible moment, I almost believed the concern was real. Then I looked over her shoulder at Kelvin. He stood in the doorway, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Calculation beneath the mask of relief. "How are you feeling?" His voice was carefully calibrated. Concerned son, worried child. "Much better." I smiled. "I'm so sorry I ruined the trip. The doctor said it was just stress. I haven't been sleeping well. Nothing serious." "We were scared." Vivian released me, stepped back. "You looked so pale on that platform." "Older hearts are unpredictable," I shrugged. "We can try again next month. I promise I won't collapse this time." They exchanged a glance. Quick, but I caught it. The look of conspirators recalculating. "No rush," Kelvin said. "Your health comes first." They retreated upstairs to unpack. I returned to my study and closed the door. Phase 1 complete. They believed I suspected nothing. Now for Phase 2. The next morning, I went to an electronics store on Walnut Street. "Voice-activated recorder," I told the young clerk. "For lectures. Simple to operate. My hands aren't what they used to be." He showed me 3 models. I chose the middle option. Small enough to hide. Good battery life. Sensitive microphone. Paid cash. No paper trail. That evening, I positioned the device in my living room. 3rd shelf from the bottom on the bookcase beside the fireplace, tucked behind a row of biographies. The microphone faced the couch where Kelvin and Vivian spent most evenings. I activated it before heading upstairs. Claimed fatigue. Then I waited. 3 nights later, I retrieved the recorder while they were out. Brought it to my study. Connected headphones. Hours of nothing. Television sounds. Mundane conversation about groceries, weather, what to make for dinner. Then, at the 3-hour mark, Vivian's voice cut through. She survived. How did that happen? My blood froze. Kelvin's response came flat, frustrated. Bad luck, bad timing. Someone must have warned her. Maybe she overheard something, I don't know. So what now? We're running out of time, Kelvin. The collectors are calling every day. We can't make next month's payment on the loan. If we default... I know. His voice turned hard, cold in a way I'd never heard from my son. We need another approach. Something here, at home. A pause. Then Vivian quieter. Like what? An accident? She takes those heart medications. If she got confused, took too many. Or maybe she falls. The stairs are steep. Old people fall all the time. Silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, pounding so loud I was sure the microphone would pick it up. Finally, Vivian spoke. I don't know if I can actually... You want out of debt or not? Kelvin's voice cut like a blade. She's got close to $1 million in assets between the house and investments. She could live 20 more years. We don't have 20 years. We don't have 20 months. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Vivian. The medication thing might work if we're careful. We'll be careful. We just have to be patient. I ripped the headphones off. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I'd suspected. I'd known, intellectually, since the train platform. But hearing it, hearing my son discuss murdering me like he was planning a home renovation, I pressed my palms flat on the desk, forced myself to breathe, document everything, build the case, don't react emotionally. I listened to that section 3 more times, saved the file, made 2 backup copies on separate drives, evidence obtained, But they didn't make me wait long for the next attempt. It started 3 days later. I came downstairs for my morning coffee and noticed the staircase was wet. Water glistening on the wooden steps. No bucket visible, no mop. Kelvin emerged from the kitchen as I stood there, gripping the banister. "Oh, I was cleaning earlier," he said casually. "Must have used too much water." "Sorry about that." Our eyes met. I nodded slowly, said nothing, descended carefully, holding the rail with both hands. That week, the stairs were wet 3 more times. I started using the back staircase exclusively. Then came the vitamins. Vivian presented them at breakfast one morning. A small bottle of capsules, set beside my plate like a gift. "I picked these up for you," she said brightly. "Special supplements for stress and heart health. I read about them online. They're supposed to be amazing for women our age." Our age. She was 36. "That's thoughtful of you." I picked up the bottle, examined it. Generic label. No brand name. "Where did you get these?" "Health food store in Center City. You're supposed to take 2 every morning with food." She watched me with an intensity that didn't match the casual conversation. Her eyes tracked my hands as I opened the bottle, shook 2 capsules into my palm. "They'll help you feel better," she added. "You've been so tense lately." I put them in my mouth, pretended to swallow, took a long drink of coffee. "Thank you, Vivian, that's very kind," she smiled, relaxed slightly. But the capsules were tucked under my tongue. As soon as she left the kitchen, I spit them into a napkin. That night, I started collecting them. Every morning, same routine. Palm the pills while pretending to swallow. Store them in a plastic bag hidden in my desk. After 2 weeks, I had enough for testing. I found a private medical laboratory across town. Paid $200 cash. Left a phone number, no name. The results came back 5 days later. My hands trembled as I read the report. Zolpidem, a prescription sleep medication. 50 milligrams per capsule, triple the normal dose, enough to cause dangerous sedation, confusion, impaired balance, the perfect setup for a fall down steep stairs. My daughter-in-law was drugging me. I drove straight to the law offices of Richard Chen, an estate attorney whose father I'd worked with decades ago. I brought everything: the insurance policy, the recorded conversation, Diane's notarized statement, the investigator's financial report, the bag of doctored vitamins, and the lab results. Richard examined each piece of evidence carefully. His face grew darker with every document. "Mrs. Hartwell," he finally said, "this is attempted murder. Conspiracy, fraud, poisoning. We need to contact police immediately." "And what will happen?" I kept my voice level. "The recording might be inadmissible, obtained without their consent. The poisoning charge requires proving intent, which a good defense attorney will argue away." She thought they were real supplements. She was trying to help. The insurance policy shows motive, but motive isn't proof. They'll get lawyers, drag everything out for years, maybe plead down to some minor charge. Meanwhile, I'm still living with people who are actively trying to end me. Richard was quiet. He knew I was right. "What do you want to do?" "I want to protect my assets legally and completely, make it impossible for them to benefit from my death. Can you do that?" He pulled his keyboard closer. "Yes, I can do that." Over the next hour, he explained the strategy: a revocable living trust. I would transfer everything: house, investments, bank accounts, into the trust's name. I'd remain trustee with full control during my lifetime. But upon my death, assets wouldn't pass through probate to legal heirs. They'd go directly to beneficiaries I designated. "An educational foundation," Richard suggested. "Legitimate, clean, legally unassailable. In your husband's name, perhaps." "The David Hartwell Memorial Scholarship Fund," I said, "for forensic accounting students." Richard nodded. "And Kelvin gets nothing unless you specifically name him as a beneficiary." He met my eyes. "Which you won't, which I won't." The trap was being built. The next 2 weeks passed in careful, deliberate steps. I met with Richard 4 more times, reviewing documents, signing papers, my initials and margins, everything witnessed and notarized. I visited my bank, moved accounts into the trust's name. The county recorder's office filed the deed transferring my house, all done quietly, professionally, without drama. At home, I maintained perfect normalcy, set the table for dinner, asked Kelvin about his job search, listened to Vivian's complaints about her family, smiled and nodded, and pretended I wasn't watching them plot my death from across the dinner table. 2 weeks after that first meeting with Richard, he called. It's complete, filed, recorded, legally binding. They can't touch a penny. That evening, I waited until we were halfway through dinner. "Oh, I meant to mention something," I said casually, cutting into my chicken. "I transferred the house into a trust last week, tax optimization mostly. An accountant friend suggested it." Kelvin's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What does that mean exactly?" His voice was carefully controlled. I took a sip of water, smiled mildly, like a confused old woman explaining something she barely understood herself. "Estate planning. The house is now held in trust. When I die, it passes directly to the designated beneficiary, not through probate. Very efficient. Banks can't touch it for debts. Creditors can't make claims. Who's the beneficiary?" Vivian's voice had gone tight. Her knuckles were white around her fork. "An educational foundation. I'm setting it up in David's name. Scholarships for accounting students." I dabbed my mouth with my napkin. It's what he would have wanted. The silence stretched. Kelvin set his fork down slowly. Vivian stared at her plate like she was trying to burn a hole through it. "That's generous," Kelvin finally said. The word came out strangled. "I thought so." I finished my meal, pushed back from the table. "I'm tired. Think I'll turn in early." I climbed the stairs to my room, closed the door. Then I sat in the darkness, door cracked slightly, and listened. 20 minutes. That's how long it took. Kelvin's voice erupted first, loud enough to carry through the floor. "What the hell happened? How did she figure it out?" Vivian's response came panicked, high-pitched. "I don't know. She must have talked to someone, found something. The insurance payout is useless if we can't get the house and investments. That's where the real money is. Maybe we can contest it, challenge the trust. With what lawyer? With what money?" A crash. Something thrown against a wall. She just cut us out completely. Everything we've done for the past year and a half, worthless. Their voices continued, accusations flying, recriminations. The desperate scrambling of predators who just watched their prey escape. I sat in my dark room and allowed myself one thin smile. First blood drawn. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. And over the next 2 weeks, my son and his wife proved exactly how dangerous they could be. It started with a letter from a lawyer I'd never heard of. A petition had been filed with the family court. Petition for determination of incapacity. Eleanor Hartwell. I read it 3 times, my blood running colder with each pass. Kelvin and Vivian were petitioning to have me declared mentally incompetent, unable to manage my own affairs due to paranoid delusions, irrational behavior, and cognitive decline. If they won, they'd become my legal guardians, control over my assets, control over my medical decisions, control over my life. The petition included testimony from 3 witnesses, friends of Kelvin's, names I didn't recognize. Their affidavits described observing Mrs. Hartwell making bizarre accusations and appearing confused and disoriented on multiple occasions. Complete fabrication, but official, filed. A court date set for 10 days away. Brilliant strategy, vicious execution. If they couldn't inherit through my death, they'd have the court hand them control while I was still breathing. I called Richard immediately. "They're trying to have me declared incompetent." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tight with controlled fury. "This is fraudulent testimony, potentially perjury, but we need to take it seriously. If the judge believes even part of it, they could get temporary guardianship pending a full evaluation." "What do we need?" "A comprehensive psychiatric assessment from a licensed professional. Documentation proving beyond any doubt that you're completely competent. Richard arranged an appointment with Dr. Patricia Webb, a forensic psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations. I met her the next day. 3 hours of testing, cognitive assessments, memory evaluation, psychological screening, questions about daily functioning, decision-making, reasoning ability. At the end, Dr. Webb reviewed her findings with me. Mrs. Hartwell, you scored in the superior range on every measure. Memory, judgment, reasoning, processing speed, all excellent for any age, exceptional for 62. She smiled. There's absolutely no indication of mental illness, dementia, or impairment of any kind. Can you document that for court? In detail? I'll have my written report ready in 48 hours. It will be thorough. The hearing took place in family court on a gray Tuesday morning. Kelvin and Vivian sat with their attorney, a young man who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the proceedings went on. I sat across the aisle with Richard. Judge Margaret Torres, stern and silver-haired, reviewed the petition. Counselor, present your case. Their attorney called Kelvin's witnesses. One by one, they took the stand. One by one, their testimony crumbled under Richard's cross-examination. How many times have you actually met Mrs. Hartwell? Twice, briefly. And based on 2 brief meetings, you're prepared to testify that she's mentally incompetent? Well, Kelvin said, I'm asking what you observed. Personally, not what you were told. Silence. Then Richard presented Dr. Webb's evaluation. 23 pages, comprehensive and devastating. Judge Torres read it carefully, her expression shifting from neutral attention to something harder, but Richard wasn't finished. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to present additional context for this petition. She nodded. He played the audio recording. Kelvin's voice filled the silent courtroom. She could live 20 more years. We don't have 20 years. Vivian's response. The medication thing might work, if we're careful. Richard presented the text messages I'd found on Kelvin's phone, a conversation with someone named Mike about making it look like an accident. He shared Diane's notarized statement about overhearing murder plans. He showed the lab report proving the vitamins contained dangerous sedatives. He displayed the fraudulent insurance policy with my forged signature. The silence when he finished was absolute. Judge Torres looked at Kelvin and Vivian. Her face had transformed from professional neutrality to open disgust. This petition is not just unfounded, she said slowly. It's malicious. It represents a misuse of this court's resources and processes for personal financial gain. She turned to me. Mrs. Hartwell, based on what I've seen today, you have substantial grounds for criminal charges. I strongly encourage you to pursue them. Thank you, Your Honor. My voice was steady. I'll consider my options. The petition was denied. Court adjourned. Outside, Richard and I stood in the gray afternoon light. Kelvin and Vivian emerged minutes later. Their attorney already gone. Fled, more likely, realizing he'd been used to perpetrate fraud. Vivian wouldn't meet my eyes. She walked straight to their car without looking back. But Kelvin stopped, turned, looked at me across the courthouse steps. His face wasn't defeated. It wasn't ashamed. It was calculating, still planning, still scheming, still looking for another angle, and in that moment I understood something clearly. The legal system had failed me. Oh, I'd won this battle, but winning wasn't enough. They'd file appeals, find new lawyers, try new angles. As long as they were free, as long as they believed there was any chance of getting my money, they would never stop. What do you want to do now? Richard asked quietly. I watched my son drive away, my daughter-in-law beside him. The two of them already arguing, probably blaming each other, already planning their next move. The legal system is too slow, I said, too uncertain. I have something better in mind. Richard raised an eyebrow. Which is? I turned to face him. They tried to destroy me financially, legally, physically. Failed at all 3. Now I'm going to show them what real destruction looks like. Have you ever wondered what happens when a predator realizes they've become the prey? I was about to find out. The morning after the court hearing, I sat in my study with a fresh cup of coffee and my laptop open. Kelvin and Vivian had retreated to their room the night before without a word. I'd heard them arguing through the floor until well past midnight. Accusations, blame, the sound of something shattering against a wall. Good. Let them tear each other apart. But I wasn't content to simply watch their marriage crumble under the weight of failure. They'd tried to murder me, tried to steal everything I'd built, tried to have me declared incompetent so they could control my life like a puppet. Consequences were coming, and I intended to deliver them personally. The first domino was already in place. I just needed to tip it. During my investigation, I discovered something interesting buried in public records. 6 months earlier, Vivian had taken out what's called an inheritance advance loan, $60,000 borrowed against the estate she expected to receive when I died. The audacity still amazes me. She'd literally monetized my murder before it happened. But here's the thing about inheritance loans. They're secured by the expected inheritance. If that inheritance disappears, the loan goes into immediate default. I drafted a letter with Richard's help. Formal, documented, devastating. It explained that due to recent estate restructuring, Vivian Hartwell would receive no inheritance from Eleanor Hartwell's estate. The trust documents were attached as proof. We sent it to Heritage Financial, the company that had given her the loan. Their response came within 72 hours. A demand letter to Vivian, immediate repayment of $60,000, plus accrued interest, or alternative collateral within 15 days. Vivian had nothing. No assets, no savings, no backup plan. The second domino fell just as quickly. Kelvin, I discovered, had used my address on multiple credit applications over the past 2 years. My Chestnut Hill address made him look more creditworthy, suggested he lived in an expensive home, had financial stability. The credit companies had granted him higher limits based on this false information. Credit application fraud, a federal offense. I documented everything. The applications listing my address, the eviction notice proving he didn't legally reside there, my statement that I'd never authorized use of my address for any purpose. Richard contacted Chase, Capital One, and Citibank on my behalf, provided documentation of the fraudulent applications. The investigations move fast. Credit fraud is serious business. Within 2 weeks, all 3 companies sent Kelvin letters. His credit limits were slashed. His accounts were flagged for fraud, and due to the deceptive application information. They were accelerating his payment schedules. He owed $34,000, due immediately. He couldn't pay $3,400. The calls started that same week. First Vivian, voice thick with tears. Eleanor, please, the bank is demanding money we don't have. Kelvin's credit cards are threatening legal action. We're drowning here. Please, I'm sorry, we're sorry. Just help us. Call off the banks. I let it go to voicemail. Then Kelvin, harder, angrier. Mom, you're destroying us. You've made your point. Now fix this. We're your family. I deleted the message without responding. More calls followed, pleading, angry, manipulative, desperate. Different tactics, same goal. Get me to rescue them from the consequences of their own actions. I ignored them all. Here's what they didn't understand. I hadn't done anything to them. I'd simply stopped protecting them from reality. I didn't create their debts, didn't forge their credit applications, didn't lie to banks about expected inheritance. I just removed the foundation of lies they'd built their lives upon. The collapse was inevitable. I merely accelerated the timeline. But Kelvin, it turned out, wasn't ready to accept defeat. Late one evening, I heard pounding on my front door. Loud, aggressive, desperate. I looked through the window. Kelvin stood on my porch, swaying slightly, clearly intoxicated. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. Mom, open up! His fist slammed against the door again. You're going to fix this. You owe us. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called 911. There's an intoxicated man threatening me at my residence. He's my son. I have a history of documented threats from him. Kelvin continued shouting while I waited. His words slurred together, accusations and demands and half-formed threats. You can't do this to us. I'm your son. After everything we did for you. He didn't finish that sentence. probably realized how it sounded. Police arrived within 8 minutes. I provided documentation, the court case, the threatening voicemails, the history of attempted harm. Officers removed Kelvin from my property. He was belligerent, resistant, still shouting as they guided him toward the patrol car. "You should consider a restraining order, ma'am," one officer suggested before leaving. "This kind of escalation usually gets worse before it gets better." I filed the next morning. The judge granted an emergency protection order. Kelvin must stay 500 feet from me. My home, my property. Violation meant immediate arrest. It was served that afternoon. They tried one more thing, one last desperate gambit. A week after the restraining order, I received an email from a journalist at a local tabloid. "Mrs. Hartwell, I've been contacted by your son and daughter-in-law regarding claims of elder financial abuse. They allege you've become paranoid and vindictive, using the legal system to punish them for minor family disagreements. Would you like to comment before publication?" I read it twice, cold fury settling over me. They were trying to rewrite history, paint themselves as victims, destroy my reputation before I could destroy theirs. Richard moved fast. Within 24 hours, we'd assembled a comprehensive media package, every piece of evidence, organized chronologically, documented thoroughly. The audio recordings, the text messages, Diane's notarized statement, the lab reports on the poisoned vitamins, the fraudulent insurance policy, the court documents from the dismissed incompetency petition. Judge Torres calling their case malicious. We sent it to every outlet they'd contacted, plus the Philadelphia Inquirer's investigative desk. The tabloids dropped the story immediately. Too much legal liability. But the Inquirer was interested, very interested. 3 weeks later, they published a feature piece. "When Inheritance Becomes Motive, a Philadelphia Story." No names were used, but the details were specific enough that anyone in our social circles would recognize the situation. The article described the planned train accident, the poisoned vitamins, the fraudulent insurance policy, the attempted incompetency petition. Factual. Well-sourced, devastating. I heard through mutual acquaintances what happened next. Friends who'd believed Kelvin's difficult mother's story now knew the truth. Former business associates distanced themselves. Vivian's social circle evaporated overnight. They were pariahs, destroyed not by me directly, but by the exposure of their own actions. By September, it was over. Kelvin and Vivian filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7, Total Liquidation. The court allowed them to keep basic necessities. An old car, clothing, minimal household items. Everything else was sold to pay creditors. They moved to a small apartment in a rough neighborhood across the city. Kelvin found work at a warehouse, loading trucks. Vivian took a job as a cashier at a discount store. Their debts were restructured into a 7-year payment plan. Between the bankruptcy, the fraud flags on their credit, and their ruined reputations, they'd lost everything. The house they'd coveted, the money they'd schemed for, the comfortable life they'd tried to steal through murder. Gone. I felt no triumph hearing this, no satisfaction, just a quiet recognition that consequences had finally arrived. There was one more thing I needed to do. I invited Diane to coffee, the conductor who'd saved my life on that train platform 6 months earlier. We met at a cafe near 30th Street Station. She arrived in casual clothes between shifts, looking slightly uncomfortable in a social setting. "You saved my life that day," I told her. "Without your warning, I would have boarded that train. Whatever they planned would have worked." She shook her head, modest. I just couldn't stay silent. What I heard was wrong. I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $5,000. "This isn't payment," I said when she tried to refuse. "It's gratitude. You risked everything. Your job, potentially your safety, to warn a stranger. Let me give you something practical in return for something priceless." She accepted, eyes glistening. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Build something good from all this wreckage." The David Hartwell Memorial Scholarship Fund was established that October. $50,000 to start, with annual contributions from my pension. Upon my death, my entire estate, the house, the investments, Everything will transfer to the foundation. The first scholarships will be awarded next academic year. Forensic accounting students from low-income families. Young people who want to do what I did, follow the money, expose the lies, build cases against those who think they're too clever to be caught. David would have loved it. He always believed in education, in opportunity, in giving young people the tools to build honest lives. This is his legacy now, not an inheritance squandered by a greedy son and his scheming wife. Something meaningful, something lasting. A few days after the foundation paperwork was finalized, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. K. I stared at the screen for a long time. My finger hovered over the reply button. I thought about everything. The whispered conversations, the poison vitamins, the wet stares, the insurance policy. The courtroom where my son tried to have me declared insane so he could control my life and steal my assets. I thought about the little boy in those photographs, the one with the missing teeth and the crooked graduation cap, the one I'd rocked through fevers and nightmares, defended to teachers, welcomed back into my home with open arms. Where did that boy go? When did he become someone capable of planning his mother's murder over money? I don't know. Maybe I never will. I set the phone down without responding. Here's what I've learned. Apologies that arrive after consequences aren't really apologies. They're regret at being caught, remorse at outcomes, not genuine change. If Kelvin had been truly sorry, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. The time for sorry was before the planning, before the scheming, before he looked at his mother and saw a dollar sign instead of a person. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Some betrayals are too complete for forgiveness to mean anything. It's November now. The leaves have fallen. The house feels different, quieter, but not lonely, peaceful. I wake each morning in a home that's truly mine. I drink my coffee on the porch, watching the neighborhood come alive. Neighbors wave. The mailman knows my name. The azaleas David planted are dormant now, but they'll bloom again in spring. My phone sits on the kitchen counter most days, silent. Kelvin's text remains unanswered. It will stay that way. I think often about what Diane said to me on that train platform, months ago now. You saved your own life by listening. She was right, but I think the truth goes deeper than that. I saved my life by finally seeing clearly, by letting go of the desperate need to believe my son was someone he wasn't, by trusting my instincts instead of my hopes. 35 years of following the money, exposing lies, building cases, and I almost missed the fraud happening in my own home because I loved the perpetrator too much to look closely. Love can make us blind, but our skills, our experience, our hard-earned expertise, they can save us if we're brave enough to use them. Justice doesn't arrive uninvited. That's the lesson I want to leave you with. It doesn't come automatically, doesn't appear because we deserve it, doesn't materialize simply because we were wronged. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, brick by brick, document by document, consequence by consequence. I built mine. The predators became prey. The schemes collapsed, the liars were exposed, and from the wreckage, something good is growing. Scholarships. Thank you for watching this entire story. I'll see you in the next one.